When the clock struck midnight on June 30, 1997, the blue British flag was lowered, and the red flag of China was raised. The United Kingdom returned Hong Kong to Chinese sovereignty after more than 150 years of colonial rule. At that moment, one country, two systems, the arrangement governing the relationship between Hong Kong and China's central government through 2047, came into force. The Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984 dictated the terms under which Hong Kong was returned to China. In exchange for Britain's peaceful return of Hong Kong, China agreed to create a corpus separatum from the mainland for Hong Kong. The Joint Declaration stipulates, among other things, that the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region will be directly under the central government of China and that it will enjoy a high degree of autonomy, except in foreign and defense affairs. The Special Administrative Region will be vested with executive, legislative and independent judicial power, and that the laws currently in force will remain basically unchanged. Hong Kong's government will be composed of local residents and a chief executive appointed by the central government based on results of elections or consultations held locally. Hong Kong's current social and economic systems and the lifestyle of its people will remain unchanged. Rights and freedoms will be ensured by law. The Declaration and the Hong Kong's Basic Law, the city's constitutional document, enshrined the city's capitalist system and way of life and granted a high degree of autonomy including executive, legislative, and independent judicial powers for 50 years until June 30, 2047. In the more than 20 years after the handover, there was a series of official initiatives aimed at enhancing Beijing's control in ways that would undermine both the autonomy and the rule of law. For instance, in 2003, the Hong Kong government proposed national security legislation that would have prohibited treason, secession, sedition, and subversion against the Chinese government. In 2012, it tried to amend Hong Kong schools' curricula to foster Chinese national identity, which many residents saw as Chinese propaganda. And in 2014, Beijing proposed a framework for universal suffrage, allowing Hong Kongers to vote for the city's chief executive but only from a Beijing-approved short list of candidates. Protesters organized massive rallies, known as the Umbrella Movement, to call for true democracy. Despite international media attention, the protests failed to bring about real change to the electoral system. The Hong Kong legislature ultimately rejected the 2014 proposal, and the 2017 election went forward, with the elite body voting to elect Carrie Lam, a staunchly pro-Beijing candidate. Another test came in late 2015, with the extrajudicial extradition of Hong Kong booksellers, who printed books critical of China's leaders and their private life. Under one country, two systems, Hong Kong maintains an independent judicial system. But in what appears to have been a direct violation of the Joint Declaration and basic laws, Chinese authorities abducted, illegally extradited, and detained these booksellers on trumped-up charges. In the summer of 2019, Hong Kong saw its largest protests ever. The catalyst for the protests was the Hong Kong government's decision to amend the Fugitive Offenders Ordinance on the pretext of the ongoing Chan Tongkai case. Chan is accused of murdering his girlfriend in Taipei but cannot be extradited to stand trial in Taiwan because the law does not allow Hong Kong to transfer fugitives to mainland China and Taiwan. On June 16, up to 2 million citizens took to the streets to protest against the amendment bill, which they believe would destroy the firewall between Hong Kong and the mainland, where fair trials are not guaranteed. Reports of police brutality, including the excessive use of tear gas and rubber bullets, exacerbated tensions. Chief Executive Lam withdrew the bill in September, but the protests, which garnered international attention, continued until the outbreak of COVID-19 in early 2020. Beijing took its most assertive action yet on June 30, 2020, when it bypassed the Hong Kong legislature and imposed a new national security law on the city. The legislation effectively criminalizes any dissent, and adopts extremely broad definitions for crimes such as terrorism, subversion, secession, and collusion with foreign powers. It also allows Beijing to establish a security force in Hong Kong and influence the selection of judges who will hear national security cases. Pro-democracy activists and lawmakers decried the move and expressed fears that it could be the end of Hong Kong. Meanwhile, Chinese officials and pro-Beijing lawmakers said it was necessary to restore stability following the massive protests. Authorities have used the law to try to eliminate all forms of political opposition. They disqualified pro-democracy candidates from running in the 2020 legislative elections, which were ultimately postponed, and removed elected lawmakers for publicly opposing China's control over Hong Kong. In addition, police have arrested dozens of Hong Kong's most prominent pro-democracy activists and former lawmakers, and the government has started to prosecute them. These moves have silenced many Hong Kong residents who had fought for democracy and prompted others to flee the city. In recent years, Beijing has moved to connect Hong Kong more to mainland China by creating the Greater Bay Area Project. The project will link Hong Kong, Macau, and 9 cities in the Guangdong province into an integrated economic and business hub. The Greater Bay Project covers an area containing nearly 70 million people with a $1.5 trillion economy, bigger than G20 countries including Australia, Indonesia, and Mexico. So, what will happen to Hong Kong after 2047? Yet despite these repeated tests of the one country two systems regime, the system will likely persist through 2047, thanks to its direct contribution to Beijing's central interest in overall stability and continuity. First, it facilitates the stability needed for Hong Kong's continued status as a global financial hub. Much like at the end of the colonial era, the business community's need for stability is key to Hong Kong's economic health. The expiration of one country, two systems will engender problem for property rights, mortgage, loan repayments, and bond issuance. In Hong Kong, all land is owned by the government and leased to developers and others through auctions. In the new territories, a suburban district, as many as 350,000 such lease contracts will expire in 2047. Banks argue that uncertainty over the legal structure beyond that year will make it difficult to extend loans, which could cause turmoil in the property market. A sudden or drastic change to one country two systems, or the community's loss of faith in Hong Kong's governing structure, could throw the economy and financial markets both in Hong Kong and mainland China into flux. For a government that derives much of its continued legitimacy from economic growth, such a situation is undesirable. Given this need, any replacement of one country two systems would require years of advanced notice to ensure the stability of financial markets. In fact, Chinese leaders have never suggested that they want to end one country, two systems or intend to impose a socialist system on Hong Kong after June 30, 2047. Deng Xiaoping, the China's leader during the signing of the Joint Declaration and drafting of the Hong Kong Basic Law, has repeatedly suggested that one country, two systems would remain in force beyond that date. In 1990, for instance, in a meeting with Hong Kong tycoon Li Ka-shing, when he was asked about the continuity of Hong Kong policy, Deng Xiaoping told him no change, impossible to change. No change, not only in short term, but also in long terms. I have repeated this for many times. That is, for the first 50 years it cannot be changed, and for the second there will be no reason to change it. How about existing Chinese President Xi Jinping? The only public hint of how President Xi views the issue came in 2017, when he told the party's 19th Congress that we should ensure that the principle of one country, two systems remains unchanged. Some observers interpreted his language as indicating a willingness to extend the status or something like it. Additionally, the 1984 Joint Declaration is a litmus test of China's dedication to the international order. While Great Britain has no direct mechanism to enforce the Joint Declaration, Beijing is no doubt keenly aware of the international ramifications of reneging on a binding treaty agreement. A significant violation of the agreement could be seen internationally as an affront by China to an international order it strenuously claims it is not challenging. Such an outright violation would engender further distrust in the international community of China's rise and its intentions and reliability in the future. Finally, one country two systems is viewed as a possible model for the peaceful reunification of Taiwan with the People's Republic of China, and its success serves as a useful diplomatic tool for Beijing. One country two systems remains the best possible scenario for reintegration without war or a sudden change in the political landscape. Since the Umbrella Movement and the election of anti-Beijing Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen, this remains a distant possibility. However, it is in Beijing's direct interest to maintain this option to the Taiwanese people. A sudden reneging of its obligations to Hong Kong would remove any remaining attraction that might exist in Taiwan for a one-country two-systems style negotiated reunification. Last decade's two major tests of one country two systems provide strong cause for concern over Hong Kong's future. Overall, many point to Beijing's ever-growing desire to control all aspects of life in China and Hong Kong as proof that one country, two systems simply will not last. One country, two systems, however, should not be seen as a framework for full liberal democracy. Not even in the colonial era did Hong Kong enjoy that. Rather, it is a compromise over what the Chinese Communist Party can tolerate under its rule. Beijing will most likely continue to assert political control over Hong Kong in ever more heavy-handed ways. Nonetheless, specific political and economic constraints provide hope that one country, two systems will endure. Last, let's see what Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said during a dialogue at the Forbes Global CEO Conference in Singapore on October 16, 2019 on one country, two systems.
From China's point of view, they must not only think of one country, but remember this is two systems. And from Hong Kong's point of view, you must not only think of two systems, but remember that this is one country. And that calls for wisdom and restraint on both sides.